What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got our Week 9 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at Pigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. You agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, I want to highlight the sponsor of today's video, OddsJam. OddsJam continues to be the place that I use for all of my sports betting research, from the NFL, NBA, MLB, to daily fantasy and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you firsthand all the amazing tools OddsJam has to offer. Starting with their positive EV tool, which identifies situations where a single sportsbook has mispriced their line compared to the rest of the market. They're basically willing to pay a lot more so that you bet with them compared to the other sportsbook. At the end of the day, you're getting the best odds, essentially a mathematical edge and guaranteed money in the long run. But also available is OddsJam's arbitrage tool, which shows situations where the market is so mispriced that you can bet on both sides and guarantee a risk-free return. OddsJam's calculators show you exactly how much you have to bet on the over and under and what the respective guaranteed risk-free return would be. There's also OddsJam's Sportsbook tool, which consolidates all available market info, over 200 sportsbooks, and provides updates in real time and allows you to see line movement. But my personal favorite is their Fantasy Optimizer tool, which is great for those using PrizePicks, Underdogs, or other daily fantasy sites, as you get to see discrepancies between all of these sportsbooks. Imagine, PrizePicks has a Patrick Mahomes line at 200.5 passing yards, and all other books like FanDuel and Underdog have this line at 230 passing yards. Well, getting the over 200.5 on PrizePicks would be an absolute steal. Guess what? OddsJam does that for you. And the good news is, if you sign up today and use our code PIGSKIN, check the link and promo code in the description of this video, you will get 25% off your first month. OddsJam also has a 7-day free trial, so you get to try before you buy. So don't waste any more time and sign up for OddsJam using our code PIGSKIN today. Now, we kick off Week 9 on Thursday with the Titans at the Steelers. And again, similar with the running backs, not a lot of individual fantasy players that I love here. I'll be honest with you guys. Only one start in this entire matchup. To me, that is Diontae Johnson. And primarily, it is in PPR formats, because I think regardless of who the quarterback is, whether it's Kenny Pickett, whether it's Mitch Trubisky, Diontae Johnson is going to see a lot of volume. It might not be for touchdowns. It might not be for crazy yardage. But, if he gets you 7-8 catches for 50, 60 yards, that's still serviceable in PPR formats. I kind of think that's how we have to view him. Until the Steelers get an actual quarterback, none of these guys that they have is in the wide receiver 1 category, or even a dependable, consistent, high-end wide receiver 2, which is also partially why I have George Pickens as a sit. If you take away the high volume of touchdown success game to game, George Pickens with Diontae Johnson back, I think it becomes a huge question mark, especially with the offense and the quarterback situation being what it is and how many fantasy viable guys it can sustain. That's why we have Pickens as a sit. And then for the Titans, I think there's really only one name here to mention. It's DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of people might scowl when you see DeAndre Hopkins as a sit, but look, hear me out. Yes, Will Levis lit it up last week, and DeAndre Hopkins had 3 touchdowns. Are you kidding me? But also, DeAndre Hopkins had 4 catches. 75% of his catches went all the way to a touchdown. I don't think during a short week facing a Steelers team that should be disciplined against a rookie quarterback, I think they can have some success. I think Will Levis is going to come back down to earth a little bit. If you're chasing the production from DeAndre Hopkins, where it hasn't been there consistently all season long, I think you might be in a little bit of trouble, because I think a much more realistic stat line for DeAndre Hopkins, if you take away the touchdowns, could be 5 catches for 50 yards. It's really tough to get excited about that. So right now, again, unless he goes bonkers in the touchdown department, I think it's safer to sit Hopkins Don't go chasing the points. If anything, I think Hopkins could be a guy that's a sell high candidate right now. Then we go to the Dolphins at the Chiefs. This one's a little bit of a different situation. You've got two very fantasy viable wide receivers for the Dolphins, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle. Both were amazing last week. I think here, if this is a shootout, could potentially be the case yet again. Tyreek Hill, obviously the better option, but Jalen Waddle, a high-end wide receiver too. For the Chiefs, Rashid Rice, if you want to pick out one of the most consistent guys, quote-unquote consistent, it would probably be him. But again, I think you're probably looking at 5 to 6 catches, 60 yards. You're hoping for a touchdown. He's a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Only one that I would go with out of all these guys. I think MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, is way too boom or bust for me. So for that reason, I would sit him. What I'm hoping for here is the Chiefs, they're going to have to air it out. So Kelsey, Rice, and then maybe Pacheco has some success as a pass catcher at the running back position. That's how I'm viewing this situation. This Chiefs offense doesn't have an alpha wide receiver. Any wide receiver that you hit on, it's going to be a low-end wide receiver 2 for them. So really going to be interesting what they do moving forward at that position. Then Vikings at the Falcons. Folks, I think this is arguably going to have the biggest impact remainder of the season in terms of injuries, because last week I said it with the rushing attack here in Madison, Cam Akers. We lost Kirk Cousins for the remainder of the season with an Achilles, but the rushing attack wasn't really a factor to begin with. However, the passing attack, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson at tight end, even while Justin Jefferson is out, KJ Osborne, and then when Justin Jefferson returns, Josh Dobbs is not the answer. We saw what he did in Arizona. I wasn't all that impressed. He's not a guy that's going to air out the football as much as Kirk Cousins. He's not going to be somebody that hyper targets one player. I don't think we're going to see the same usage with Addison that we did these last couple of weeks, that it was Kirk Cousins throwing him the football. I think, if anything, it could be TJ Hawkinson, that safety valve at tight end. I think you're going to see the ball spread out a lot more inaccurate throws, a lot more inefficiency. And then once Justin Jefferson returns, if he returns, he's kind of going to be the main guy, and then everyone else is still going to be sits. That's how I view this. I really just don't believe in Josh Dobbs. For the Falcons, though, Drake London. I will start him, and honestly, I feel the best I felt about Drake London all season long, primarily because Heineke will be starting here for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that opens up a lot of things for these pass catchers. Drake London, Kyle Pitts included. Ritter to me is not the answer at the quarterback position. We'll see what the Falcons do remainder of the season, but I think Drake London can be a high-end wide receiver 2 in this game. And then Addison, Osborne, way too risky with Dobbs rest of the season. Then Bears at the Saints. I'm only looking at the Saints side of things here. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas. I wouldn't go chasing the touchdowns in Rashid Shaheed. To me, he's a big play guy. If you don't get that, and if you don't get the long touchdown, it's going to be tough. And I think from a consistency perspective, you go where the target volume is. That is Olave, that is Michael Thomas, that is Alvin Kamara. But especially if this game gets out of hand, there's not going to be a reason for the Saints to continue to pass the football as the game progresses. So if I'm betting on who's going to do most of their damage early on while this game isn't a blowout, I think it's Olave, I think it's Michael Thomas. But because game script could negatively impact them, I have both of them in the mid to high end wide receiver 2 category. And then DJ Moore might be a surprise, but look, without Justin Fields and facing a very stingy Saints defense, I just don't believe in DJ Moore. I'm not going to be excited about 4 catches for 50 yards. I think the Saints could absolutely just shut down the Bears. I think this could be a very ugly game. DJ Moore to me is a sit. Then Rams at the Packers. Another game where we have to monitor the quarterback injuries. Notice, maybe you might be shocked, and you might be saying, how do you have Puka Nacua, the breakout rookie this year, as a sit? I should say this is only if Matthew Stafford doesn't play with his thumb injury. If he doesn't play, you have a major gap in talent from starting quarterback to backup quarterback, and I think Cooper Kupp is going to be the primary guy here. You're not going to have that consistency, that relationship, that chemistry with Puka Nacua. He's also banged up, swelling in the knee for what it's worth. If Stafford plays, I'll take a chance on Puka. You have to, honestly. Both Kupp and Nacua are coming off a bad game, let's just put it that way, versus the Cowboys. But, that was a game where it got out of hand very early on. They saw the targets, which was nice, but then Stafford gets banged up. The game gets out of hand. You could argue the starters, why are they seeing the snaps that they're seeing? So it's one of those situations. But either way, look, if Stafford doesn't play, Cooper Kupp to me isn't a wide receiver 1. He's a high-end wide receiver 2, probably mid-level wide receiver 2, similar to like a Garrett Wilson. And then Puka is a sit. For the Packers, it's a complete mess. I've been saying this since prior to the start of the season. I told you, Jordan Love is not the answer in Green Bay. I saw all I needed to see in the limited action from him. Watson, Romeo Doubs, none of these wide receivers are factors here for the rest of the fantasy season. As far as I'm concerned, they're all droppable. Then Commanders at the Patriots. I'm only confidently starting Terry McLaurin here. He's been the most consistent wide receiver for Washington all season long, and that's the name of the game in fantasy football. You could say, how are you sitting Jahan Dotson and Jamison Crowder, which, oh my God, Jamison Crowder, he's alive. But Jahan Dotson, after he had his breakout game finally, well, how can I do that? Because it took 8 weeks for that to happen. And I'm not going to let one game dissuade me from everything that I've seen so far. And that is that, you're going to have guys like Curtis Samuel. You're going to have guys like Sam Howell potentially struggle from time to time. Tough road environment. They're not going to be putting up 30-plus points every single week. So McLaurin, only guy here, high-end, mid-level wide receiver 2. For the Patriots, with Bourne out for the remainder of the season, all New England wide receivers are a sit. I could argue Ramondre Stevenson at running back is the best pass catcher they now have on this team, but God knows what the Patriots are doing there. Offensively, it doesn't make sense. Mac Jones, I don't believe in him either. So as far as that is concerned, really not a great matchup for fantasy players here from top to bottom. Then Seahawks at the Ravens. I'll start DK Metcalf. I'll start Tyler Lockett. Jensen Smith and Jigba to me is a sit because, again, third mouth to feed. Not going to see enough volume. Metcalf, Lockett, the established guys. I prefer Metcalf. But realistically, both are mid to high-end wide receiver 2s for the Ravens. Zay Flowers. Last week, none of those pass catchers had to do anything all that much. I think this will be a different case. I think Lamar will have to air it out. We're not going to see Gus Edwards on the ground with 3 rushing touchdowns yet again. I think Zay Flowers is going to be a mid to high-end wide receiver 2, primarily in PPR formats. All the other wide receivers here in Baltimore, tough to get excited about them. They haven't really produced all season long. It's not going to change now. Afterwards, Bucks at the Texans. I'll start Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. This matchup doesn't scare me, and they've been good all season long. So, to me, both high-end wide receiver 2s. For the Texans, Robert Woods probably not going to play again. So, Nico Collins, I have a tough time trusting Tank Dell and Noah Brown. I think Collins is the most dependable guy here, and I think the Texans are going to have to air it out. It's not going to be a situation where they can rely on the run like they did last week versus the Panthers. Buccaneers stingier up front. So I think Nico Collins is that mid to high end wide receiver 2. Dell and Noah Brown way too risky. Afterwards, Cardinals at the Browns. Only one guy apiece here, and both these teams could be with backup quarterbacks. Cardinals trading away Josh Dobbs. I will say, if Kyler Murray plays in this game, I am firing up Marquise Brown as a low-end wide receiver 1. If he doesn't, you go rookie quarterback route. Marquise Brown is going to be boom or bust. He is going to be a guy that you'll see volume, but you're going to have to be relying on a touchdown similar to last week in order for him to put up double-digit fantasy points. So keep that in mind. For the Browns, Amari Cooper is good enough, and the quarterback situation there isn't as dire. Where he'll still be serviceable even if it's without Deshaun Watson. I think he's a mid-level wide receiver 2, but afterwards, because of what the quarterback situation is for both these teams, not a lot of other wide receivers I'd be starting, including Elijah Moore, who I have as a sit. Then Colts at the Panthers. I'm starting Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. Both these guys, a big part of this offense, And while I do think that the Colts are going to have a big game on the ground as well, this Panthers defense doesn't scare me. I think the Colts are going to put up a bunch of points here versus the Panthers. I think Pittman and Downs both high-end wide receiver 2s. And then for Carolina, Adam Thielen, the guy's a wide receiver 1. I mean, with the volume he's seeing, with the touchdown upside, especially in PPR formats, he is a wide receiver 1. He's been a wide receiver 1 pretty much for the entirety of the season, and I think that will continue to be the case moving forward. Then Giants at the Raiders. Boy, oh boy, are the Raiders a mess. Benching Jimmy Garoppolo, firing head coaches. I don't have an explanation how Davante Adams had only 1 catch last week. Probably screwed over a lot of people in fantasy, but hopefully we get a little bit of a reboot here with the situation being what it is. And I think Davante Adams is going to bounce back. I mean, hell, it's tough not to bounce back from that performance. And then Jacoby Myers, I think we'll kind of go back to that wide receiver 2 role, low-end wide receiver 2, but Giants don't scare me defensively. Then for the Giants, you just don't have a guy at wide receiver. That's what it boils down to. Even versus the Raiders, it's probably going to be Saquon. It's probably going to be Darren Waller. That's it. That's what it boils down to. You don't have an actual wide receiver. Sorry, all these guys are sits, like has been the case all season long. Then Cowboys at the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb, obvious start, but there's going to be a number 2 guy here that steps up. It's going to have to be the case because Tony Pollard is only going to be able to do so much on the ground, and the Cowboys are going to have to keep up with the Eagles' firepower. I do like Ferguson at tight end, but again, Cooks or Michael Gallup, I'm going to bet on Cooks. I think he's the better overall wide receiver, but again, with that being said, it wouldn't shock me if Michael Gallup. None of these guys are consistent enough. There's a huge drop-off. Age, injuries, things like that, they're going to alternate. So just realize that whatever wide receiver 2 you're starting after CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys is going to be, in it of itself, a huge risk and huge boom or bust potential. I have Michael Gallup as a sit. If you want to flip those, I understand. For Philly, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, I'll start both of them. I think it can be a high-scoring game. Brown, obviously, the preferred choice wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith, kind of low to mid-level wide receiver 2. Then Bills at the Bengals. I think this is going to be an aerial showdown. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. I like both of them. I prefer Diggs, obviously, wide receiver 1. Gabe Davis, similar to maybe a Devonta Smith, boom or bust wide receiver 2. For Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Chase, the obvious wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd kind of go back and forth a little bit, but Higgins is the better overall wide receiver. Boyd just happens to do, I guess more with less, and he has some touchdown success, but if you take away the singular touchdown, it's tough to get excited about Tyler Boyd. So I'm going with Chase, Higgins, sitting Boyd as of right now. Then Chargers at the Jets. I'm only starting 1 guy a piece here. For the Chargers, it's Keenan Allen. You might be surprised. Why are you not starting Josh Palmer? Why are you not starting Quinn Johnston? Keep up with me here. Josh Palmer looked like he suffered a very serious knee injury last week. We thought he might be done for the season. Then he comes back, actually plays in that game, but didn't really do anything for the next 2 quarters. Quinn Johnston saw some moments. Right now, I'm not on Quinn Johnston. If Josh Palmer plays, first of all, I don't think he's going to be 100%. The Jets can be a stingy defense. And if Palmer plays, even if he's, kind of a distraction there for the opposing defenses, I don't see Quinn Johnston being the guy. Like, I could see Gerald Everett being a guy. I could see Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, but just way too much inconsistency. I'd rather sit both these guys. If Palmer was 100% healthy, I would take a chance on him, but that's just not the case. And then for the Jets, Garrett Wilson. You're praying for volume, similar to the case with guys like Marquise Brown, and Cooper Kupp. Got basically guys with not the best quarterback situations right now. I think Wilson is a mid to high end wide receiver too, but boom or bust. And then Allen Lazard to sit. Just please, with Zach Wilson throwing you the football, it's not happening, a second fantasy viable wide receiver. But with that, we wrap up our Week 9 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.